Hello, this is Brian Foster on Kardec Radio, presenting the program Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us. Hello, this is Brian Foster on a Sunday night, November 26, 2017. I want to welcome everybody to the program. This is going to be another exciting program. This is episode 2 of going over my book, Heaven and Below, book 1 of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar. This is all about many high spirits and relatively lower spirits too. Many spirits in heaven revealed to Reverend Vale Owen, many facets about heaven and below, spirits, the spirit universe, how we're guided by spirits, what's the future of the world. And I've written a series of 3 books about it. But first, let me tell you, every Sunday night, we gather here on our Facebook, Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us. We live stream this program, and simultaneously, we live audio in Kardec Radio. Again, it's Kardec Radio. You can load that radio on your Apple or Android device. You just look up in either the Play, the Play area or the App Store. Type in Kardec, Kardec radio, RADIO, and you can download a free app so you can listen 24 hours a day to Spiritist programs. So I'm on, they play my programs, they play Vanessa Anceloni's programs, they play many programs, they play programs for children. It's a wonderful thing. At certain times, I'll just turn it on, listen to it, and it's always a great message and it's a lot of information. There's information about mediumship, about handling spirits, about yourself, your personal growth, your spiritual growth. I recommend Kardec Radio to everyone, please. Again, and if you want to learn more about Spiritism, please check out my blog, nwspiritism.com. I have it on the message below. It's NW, that's Northwest, nwspiritism.com, and I have a lot of information about Spiritism. I have on the Facebook site I'm streaming now, in the file section, I even have one of my books, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. It's in PDF, and you can also get it on Amazon Kindle or in paperback. It's 99 cents. It's a short introduction just to get people understanding what Spiritism is, how it can help you, how it changes your entire life. Spiritism is a wonderful revelation to all of us, and it's there to help us. But we are told, when Allan Kardec presented Spiritism to us in the 1850s, that this was the third revelation, the first one being Moses, the Old Testament, then Jesus came on the New Testament, and Jesus said, I promise you a consoler. Now, what that really meant is they're telling us more about the whole spiritual world, the whole spiritual universe, the spirit realm, the other side, as the Druids called it. And why? Why are they telling us? Well, they're telling us because what the spirits have told us is they can only fashion the messages to the humans on Earth according to their technological and sociological advances at the time. So therefore, you had a more stringent message for the Old Testament. New Testament is more about love, less about punishment. And then in the third revelation, for Spiritism, it's more, okay, this is the whole spirit universe. This is your place in it. This is what you should learn. So it's fascinating stuff. And if you're interested at all in the spirit world, it tells you more about the spirit world and the processes. That's why I cannot recommend enough to get into it. It's changed my whole life. It's made me calmer. It made me understand why I'm here on Earth. Now, let's get into the important part, heaven. Doesn't everybody want to know what heaven's like? In episode 1, we talked about it a bit. And we're still, in this episode, we're still in the revelations by the Vale Owen's mother. And she went to a city led by the spirit Kestrel. And she said that this city would be beyond our imagination. And this is what she said. She says, it would probably be utterly absurd to many to be told that here we have real solid houses and streets and mountains and trees and animals and birds, And the animals are not here for ornament alone, but also for use, and that horses and oxen and other animals are put to use. But they enjoy their work in a way which makes one glad to watch them. I noticed a horse and rider coming along the street once, and I wondered which was enjoying the canter the most of the two. So the use of dogs and horses and other animals are mentioned in the books by the spirit Andre Louis, which is, so Vale Owen psychographed these messages. He received these messages back in the 1910s, 1920s in England. And Andre Louis sent his messages to Chico Xavier in the 1940s, 50s, 60s to a Chico Xavier who didn't speak English, didn't know about Vale Owen. Vale Owen didn't know about Chico because Chico wasn't born yet. So these are the same types of messages from different spirits into people of different cultures. So in Andre Louis, he talks about how dogs accompany teams of spiritual workers trekking to the lower zones, which is a zone from the bottom level of heaven down to the surface of the earth where errant spirits reside. And the dogs that have been part of our life on earth may be with us in our spirit life too. Love creates a bond that doesn't recognize mere physical boundaries. And within the city are many squares and fountains where people gather. She's describing this capital city, where people gather and children still play. There's spirits that when they pass over, if there were children, and the spirit realm says, no, let's give the spirit, let's not put that spirit back to their mature adult. Let's help raise them in the spirit world where they're more open and help them modify their character and personality. And this is how she described it. She said, here and there, however, there were groups in the squares where the fountains played and were surrounded by basins into which waters fell. They were connected all with one broad stream which issued forth from one side of the city and fell into the plain below, a brilliant waterfall of many tints of sparkling brightness. It took its way across the plain, a fairly broad stream flowing gently over the sands, and we saw here and there some children bathing in it and throwing it over their beautiful bodies in great enjoyment. I did not think much of this until my guide remarked that these children were encouraged to bathe in the waters, as they were electrically charged and gave strength to them. For many came here very weak and required such nourishment. So again, the spirit world is full of these there's nourishing sounds, there's nourishing waters. So Vale Owen's mother continues to describe the purpose of the buildings along the wide avenues. So we are talking about a city in heaven. So this is the great secret. Heaven isn't that different as far as processes and kind of organization. It's not something you would die and you would say, where am I? How does this work? Right? If you go to heaven, you'll see things you recognize. Now they'll be more perfect and there'll be no violence, no stress, no worry, and you'll be a much better atmosphere for you. And so she was describing some of the buildings in this great city, because one of the buildings in the broad street was a library where records were kept of reports from outlying stations. Another was a laboratory where some of the reports could be tested by actual experiments. Another was a lecture hall where professors gave their results to those of their own and other branches of service. So all these descriptions could be made of some of Earth's more beautiful cities, except no police force is required to keep the peace. No environmental agency is needed to find and close down polluters, and so on. The additional overhead to guard against those who wish to take physical or monetary advantage over their fellow humans is not required in heaven. Although there are guards in the lower cities of heavens, as spirits may climb up from the lower zone. So there are the concept of security and guards in some parts of heaven. So, but mainly the people who mean harm are not allowed into heaven. They're not allowed into that city. So also what's different is how the city is governed. So she tells us is that the leader is selected, by the higher spirits. And she describes a building that appears to be constructed of polished mahogany, and the large edifice was constructed long before Castro was appointed the ruler of the district, and it functioned as a council chamber for the chief. She tells us of a long time ago what occurred in the building as the prince of the city was speaking to the assembly. So here we have this large building made out of what looks like mahogany. Of course, we all know that this building was created by the force and mind of spirits. And the prince of the city, the leader of the city before Castro, who was she meeting, was talking to a gathering of people in that building. And during that time, a young man arose on one occasion and going to the center of the auditorium, stood there and stretched out his hands and remained facing the president, the prince of the city. As he stood there, his form seemed to change and became more radiant and translucent, until at last he was surrounded by a large halo of light, and there were seen about him many angels from the higher spheres. His smile had some enigma in it, which the prince was trying to read but could not. And just as he was about to speak, there came through the open door a little boy child and looked around in surprise at the great crowd. He paused at the edge of the circle and looked at the multitude of the faces and those who sat there in the tears. He was just turning to run away again when he caught sight of the one who stood in the center, now glowing with light and glory. Immediately the little lad forgot everything else, and running as fast as his little legs would carry him, he went straight to the center of the circle with outstretched hands and a look of great joy on his face. And the one who stood there, the angel that appeared before the prince of the city, lowered his arms. He stooped down and he picked up the little one, and he approached the prince of the city, and he gently laid the little guy on his lap. And he began to walk backwards towards the place where he had stood. And then his form went dim. Now, these are the things that happen in heaven, because you have, this great power by higher spirits. They create and form. They can make themselves transparent. They can make themselves seen as to their wishes. Again, I'm saying all this so you know what you're fighting for on earth. All this power of creating giant, beautiful, mahogany-looking buildings, this power of goodness into the cities of heaven, this power of rising, of moving by thought, is why we're on earth, right? We're on earth to train our minds to always think good in every circumstance. So then, this little boy sat on this prince's lap, and he was just, cute little kid. And then the prince arose and holding the child's left arm, he said, "My brothers," because something must have come to his mind, "it is written, a little child should lead them. And these words come to my mind now. What we have seen is the manifestation of our Lord the Christ, and this little one of those who are the kingdom, as he said. What message did he give you, my child, as you lay in his arms, and he brought you to mine?" And for the first time, the boy spoke. He said, "Well, if you please, I must be good and do as you instruct me, and then he will show me from time to time new things for your city and realm, but I don't know what it means." So this little boy must have been picked to regrow into that city. So again, here's the magnificent difference between our world and the spirit world. In the spirit world, one sees the manifestations of God's natural laws and Jesus in all of his glory. Spirits view, amaze, and in wonder, but without doubt, since there is proof all around of the spirit realm and the power of thought, and they are gifted to witness the greatness of those above them. Again, unlike here, where those who are above us are not humble, well, some of them are not, or most of them are, I should say, the people and the spirits, the higher spirits, the higher you go, the more humble, the more you want to serve. You don't rise in the spirit realm unless you wish to serve and help others. So the prince took the boy home and let him wander all the different laboratories and scientific schools. And as time went on, people who worked in these areas would notice that when the boy made a suggestion, it was always in the middle of a difficult problem. A person or a team would be trying something hard to solve, and invariably his recommendation would hold the solution to the conundrum. And as the boy grew up, the prince was called to a higher sphere, and in his place, the little boy, now grown to a man, became the ruler of the district. And in this manner, Christ, who is responsible for our entire planet, appoints the right man or woman to be in charge at the right time. Whereas on earth, we are subjected to many corrupt rulers who say they act in accordance for what is best to us, but when in actuality, they act for what is best for them. In the spirit world, the higher you go, as I said before, the more you realize your task is to serve. Selfishness dissipates and is replaced with love and compassion. This is why we need to work on this, why we're here on earth, is to get rid of our pride and selfishness. And I know that's not easy. I'm still not there at all. So the purity of leadership of the governed themselves is only possible because of the law of affinity, which states that like associates with like, right? So affinity is that when you pass on, and if you are a very good person with a good heart, you haven't done anything truly evil, you will go with other people like you. You will go some level in heaven. If you are a person who is not a nice person, let's say a pickpocket or a petty thief, you will go somewhere in the lower zone or below that, because you'll go with people just like you. And therefore, that's what states, so those whose first instinct is to have the upper hand, to take advantage of the ignorance of their brothers and sisters, are motivated by by selfish purposes. Above all else, they're put into the lower zone until such time they modify their character. So heaven isn't a bewilderment to us. Not only is the environment clean and beautiful, but the people are too. All of us on earth at this moment have the capacity to begin striving for a place in one of the celestial cities. We only have to discard our baser instincts and think of others first. You can't go wrong if you follow the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So let's talk more about heaven. And this is very interesting. So we are given so much information about heaven by the spirits from Vale Owen. And again, this is again from his mother. She talks about the color of sky now in heaven. So the color of sky on earth is blue from our vantage point on earth, right? But what color of the sky is in heaven? The answer is depends on what region and what level of heaven you are in. The Reverend Owen's mother, who communicated to him in his book, Life Beyond the Veil, she tells us that as we gaze over the wide plains of the valley of the heavenly Lord, we are scarce able to remember the effect of the atmosphere of earth as it had relation to our vision of terrestrial things. Distance is not obscured. For instance, it fades away. Trees and plants do not appear for a season and then die. They bloom perpetually, and then when plucked, they are fresh for a long time, but they do not drip and wither. They fade or melt away in the atmosphere. The same atmosphere is not always white. In the neighborhood of the city of the Prince of Castile, there's a sense of a golden sunshine all around. It's not a mist and does not obscure, but bathes all things in this golden radiance. Now let's think about that for a second. When you pick a flower, it doesn't droop. It just fades away. Why is that? That's because everything is created by thought. In here on earth, we follow certain physical laws, right? Natural laws. And when a plant is plucked and the nutrients do not go up the stem any longer, it withers and dies. But in the spirit world, the plant is made by a thought. And when you pluck the plant, that thought part of the plant is still there until you cease thinking of it. And at some point in time, then, when you are no longer interested in that plant, it goes back into the universal fluid. So this is why we train so much on earth, is for us to understand the power of thought. And once we understand that the spirit realm is composed of radiated thought and a lighter physical element, which is ethereal atoms, we shouldn't be astonished at the interaction of thought and the environment. In the spirit world, ideas are action. Models radiating from a spirit's mind causes the less dense vibration of the spirit realm to conform to the conception that was formed by their ideas. So hence, the logical construct of the landscape in the distant doesn't merely just go out of focus, it loses form. That's why these things aren't, they kind of disappear. It's not like they fade away here on earth. And as one walks onward, the dominant views of the inhabitants of the next region, these logical regions in the different spheres and levels of heaven, replaces the notions of the last regions. And again, this is all caused by gathering of spirits of same affinity, and their same affinity goes to dominate the thoughts and the scenery of whatever section or level of heaven they are in. So as one walks onward, the dominant views of the next region, of course, I said, replaces the last. Therefore, the scenery changes, not because of weather, soil conditions, or other environment factors, but because of the predominance of the thinking processes of the spirits living in that area. And the same logic applies to the color of the sky. It conforms to the desire of the populace. And G. Vale Owen's mother confirms this hypothesis. She says that the tint of the atmosphere seems to be governed by this principle, but it also reflects in his actions on the people themselves. The more highly developed on coming into a new tract of country, we are able to tell by this alone the general character and occupations of the people there. The influence, however, very quickly extends to themselves. It does not change them in character, of course, but it does affect their sensations and is almost instantaneously seen in the changing hue of their robes. So again, as I said before, in our program last week, as you walk, your clothing can be affected by the vibrations of the trees and vice versa. Your feelings can be then reflected by the lights and brightness of the tree floors and the flowers, right? So thus, as one visits a strange district, she says, one very speedily begins to feel within and without that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, which is one of the most delightful of blessings I have found. Everywhere you go, you find brothers and sisters. Try to think of it, see what it means if it was thus on earth. Then the angel's greeting of peace and goodwill indeed would be realized, and earth would be the antechamber of the heavenly home. She's describing where we need to be to become a planet of regeneration. Right now, we're a planet of atonement, right? And right now, we're a planet where there's chaos. There's primitive, there's good spirits, there's spirits who aren't so good. There's good in everyone, but this depends on do they let it out? Do they promote it? And so we live in this chaotic world. And you may live in a neighborhood where you've got some really great neighbors and you have some horrible neighbors. In heaven, there are no horrible neighbors. Neighborhoods are not let into that neighborhood. They are not allowed into that area. Until you demonstrate the right character and attitude, you are not allowed in heaven. And that's why we're here, is to demonstrate and to learn, remove the blemishes, till we have the right character and attitude to be in heaven. So imagine approaching a city and immediately feeling if this is the type of place for you. And if you would find kindred spirits there, the law of affinity, which is the concept of like attracts like, as I said before, gathers those good souls in regions within heaven. Once a spirit has advanced, she or he is attracted to the next level, and so on. So life as a spirit is an eternity of upward moving, right? Moving upwards all the time, sometimes very slowly, depending on what you want to do. And maybe you're enjoying what you do. You want to help the people in that level, or other times rapidly. Our opportunity to raise ourselves higher in the least amount of time is our chance to shed negative features during a short stay on earth in a heavenly body. Only in this manner may we alter our character through episodes which are meant to teach us. Only by taking to heart and undergoing true transformation may we be allowed to venture higher in the spirit realm. Therefore, we should be thankful for our life on earth, no matter how terrible we think it may be at times. Believe me, we've all thought that. Much effort and planning has gone into our new incarnations, because we have multiple lives, and each of them have been charted out by the spirit realm. So, now what's important? So, now we go from G. Vale Owen's mother to Zabda, who's a high spirit, a higher level than Vale Owen's mother, and starts telling us what is important in heaven. What is life about? It's kind of what's the main theme? And this is what he says. What is it like? What's the very heart of life like in heaven? Because this is what we want to know. And he says this, which just exposes a lot. I would begin by telling you that in these realms, we do not dwell so much on those things which are not of immediate importance, but search out matters as the most concern our present onward way, master them, and so proceed from step to step on firm and sure ground. Now, let's parse that for a second. He's not anxious like, oh, where am I going to be in 5 years from now? Well, first of all, there's no time. There's no concept of time in heaven. Or, oh, I have to get this test, right? I'm going to focus on what I think I should do now to improve myself. If that's what you want, you can park yourself at levels of heaven for as many centuries as you wish. But what he says is, they calmly go to the next level because they know it's always there. It's all a meritocracy, right? You arise as you see fit, as you devote your time and your intellect and your emotions to that task. He goes, truly the things of infinity are not altogether absent from our minds. The nature and presence of the absolute and ultimate one, and those conditions which are about him, these are not altogether thrust aside, yet we are content to let him rest not understood. Knowing, as we judge from our own experience in these lower regions, that those beyond us must hold for us blessings even greater than our present state, as so we go onward in perfect trust and confidence, happy to advance and yet not impatient of the future toward which we surely move. So in this book, and this is why I wrote this series of 3 books. It's just, there's so many chapters about heaven, but nothing expresses the effect of living in the atmosphere of love and support more than that short paragraph above. Think about this a second. You're not using your time to think of the far future. It sounds relatively benign, but contemplate for a minute on how we judge people in our society. Being content in your job, life, or family is a sign of complacency and a lack of ambition. Justifiably so, since so many of us are trapped in suboptimal circumstances, and the bombardment of new goods to purchase spurs us on to greater achievements. Whatever means of attaining the goal of more wealth or happiness is fair game and to be lauded in our one-dimensional culture. But what? Think of this, if you were in heaven, what if everyone around you suddenly transformed? Your friends aren't dissatisfied with your life, their careers, or their relationships. What if you weren't worried about making ends meet? That food, shelter, and your job weren't constantly threatened. What if you could actually feel love all around you? How would that change your thinking and attitude? Wouldn't you behave more like an artisan, working on whatever object or objective you desired, focusing your energy on making it as perfect as possible, using your time to contemplate on your work on hand, and when finished for the day, enjoy your leisure time with family and friends, and after work is finished, you aren't worried about the company not paying you enough or going under, or the boss who hates you? Negative emotions are mostly swept away in a sea of positive influences. Isn't that contentment? Isn't that heavenly bliss? That is heaven. That is what we're fighting for. You're not going to worry about paying off the mortgage. There's no mortgage. You're not worried about what you're going to buy next year. You're not worried about your car rusting away. You're not worried about those things. You're worried about growing yourself, doing the best you can, being with friends, enjoying yourself. And one would see that higher spirits in their dedicated work for those below them, helping others rise above material attachments to earth and negative emotions, and ponder about what lies above and beyond you, right? Knowing the quality of your spiritual superiors energizes your focus to be like them one day. Therefore, the path to ascend is well known. It is a continual climb to remove all impurities. Nothing that can be done in a day, a week, or several lifetimes on earth. It's a long journey, a trek of infinity that leads to more knowledge and proximity to God. As you yearn for assistance, it will be given. A course of action will be suggested to allow you to gain what you desire. You're always being helped. It's as I tell people, we have a course to study. When we incarnate on earth, our life is predetermined. We have free will in the choices we make during these episodes that are presented to us. But we're always helped and watched by the spirit world. The same thing, even when you're a spirit, you are watched and helped by superior spirits, even the spirit world, knowing when you're ready to take that next level, knowing when to give you that next challenge. You're always supported with love. So this life, this state of contentment in heaven is why the ordeals of earthly existence must be met. Only by successfully living through the trials assigned to us with our love and honesty intact will be allowed entry into that narrow door of heaven. So let's talk more about Zabdiel. He's an interesting spirit. He actually resides on the 10th level of heaven. So Vale's mother was the one on the bottom levels of heaven. And as I said before in the first episode when I talked about the levels of heaven, the spirits who talked to Vale Owen used the numbering system. They said, look, everyone has a little bit different numbering systems, but as we talk to you, we're going to use one. So don't think that the numbering systems I'm using in this talk on these books, Heaven and Below, How We're Guided by Spirits, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, is universally used by spirits. But I've read in other things, and I see overlaps, and I see the same concept. But what they say is they say, well, there's 10 levels, and then we get to the 11th level, and that's start the level of creation. And they say Jesus must be somewhere on the 15th level because we can't see anything, from the 14th above. And we know Jesus is always present in the 15th level. So that's the other great secret of heaven, is that the knowledge, the certainty, even you're going to meet God. No, they're still not sure, even in the lower levels of heaven, what God is. How did God do all this? So let's look at Zabdiel himself. So this is in the Highland section of the group of 4 books Beyond the Veil. And Zabdiel reports, he talks about his house on the 10th level of heaven. And what he and other spirits constantly stress is that the numbering system, as I said before, is not universally used. It just kind of gives you a reference. So they also say they don't know have no idea how many levels completely there are. They only realize that must be still far down the list. So Zabdiel to us, he's on the 10th level, he's so high, but he says, I'm probably low, right? I'm the low man on the totem pole. So that just makes us even lower, of course. So as one transcends from one sphere to the next, light becomes brighter. Light, which is the reflection of the amount of love a spirit contains with him or herself. And for a spirit who has not attained the correct spiritual level, the next stage appears to be bright white light, or a mist of brightness, and the sight of an untrained spirit is unable to detect any detail within the new environment. So that's why when people have NDEs and they see this bright angel, this is the high spirit. Now, if that person at NDE went to heaven, was on the same level as that bright angel as they report, it would look like a normal person, because your senses would be able to interpret that and see that. But now let's talk about Zabdiel's house on the 10th level of heaven. So he begins his description of the house by comparing his attempt to illustrate in words his abode by taking a fish out of water and describing Westminster Abbey to the fish. So he just, he says, and you'll see this in spirits a lot of times. They say, it's hard for us to describe in your words. So there must be just marvelous things out there. So he says, okay, this is what he told G. Vale Owen. Still, since you wish it, because G. Vale Owen said, tell me about your house. I'll tell you what I can of my own house and home, and you'll probably think I might have done better when I finish. And best of all, had I refrained altogether. The country in which we build our houses touches many spheres, and among those whose natures radiate many colors according to their virtues, which coincides most nearly with those people with whom I dwell. These colors are mostly other than Again, that's another theme. There's colors that we can't see on this. Our spectrum is truly limited. But all those are here in an almost infinite combination in hue, according to the occupation in which we are mentally engaged at any time. The blend of colors varies, and the atmosphere takes on that tint. Then the house also vibrates in response to the thoughts and aspirations, whether of prayer sent onwards or help wheeled backwards through the spheres behind us, in which direction lies the earth plane. Now, as with other spheres, even the lowest level of heaven, colors are more varied in hues, they're vibrant, and they're in the hues our human eye can't detect. What seems to change as one travels upwards is the responsiveness of the surroundings to the mental transmission of spirits, which should be surprising, because as you go higher and higher, your mental force, your force of will, the amount of faith you have, the amount of love you have is stronger. You become a very forceful spirit the higher and higher you go. So, and also remember, the buildings are created by force of thought, and especially in the 10th level of heaven, a group of spirits probably came and helped create his house. So everything's connected in the spirit world and ours. So whereas we don't possess the ability to actually see it, higher spirits are part of a vast web of thoughts. They have the ability to filter the massive amount of data which is directed towards them, or their field of work and study. So then Zabdiel reinforces the effect of a spirit's will in the following passage. This is what he says. Music also proceeds from us, not necessarily by mouth, but most often directly from the heart. And this is taken up also in response by the buildings around us, which are part of our energizing, and also the trees and the flowers. And all plant life is affected and responds. This color and music are not merely inanimate here, but fraught with life and vibrate to our will. So, as I said before, our thoughts, even on earth and in human form, our thoughts radiate out everywhere, right? But we, as poor humans locked into this temporary body, most of us, some people like empaths can kind of get a general idea of thoughts. Some people can read thoughts. Chico Xavier could, the great medium in Brazil. But your ability is so much more when you're a spirit. So imagine living in a world created by your own thoughts and those of others around you, of like people. There you have total control of the environment, and you can shape objects to your will. Only the most disciplined minds could manage and maintain it without everything descending into chaos. Now imagine if you could create your own home out of thin air. While it may appear beautiful for a brief moment, let's imagine this why we're in our lack of maturity, and you create a home, but then a negative emotion would sneak up on you, and the home would suddenly transform into a black pit. This is why we go through our trials on earth. At higher levels, we can never lose control of our emotions. This is why we reincarnate as many times as it takes to instill constant love, kindness, and self-control within us. We are being trained to someday live on earth in the 10th sphere of heaven, for instance. The sooner we start the process to mold ourselves into towers of light and love, the sooner we too can live in an unimaginable paradise. So now, Zabdal gets around to actually describing the house in the best words he can. He goes, the house is 4 square, yet the walls are not 4 alone, nor at angles each to each other. They too are blended, and the outer and inner atmosphere mingles through them. These walls are not for our protection, but for other uses. And one is to concentrate our vibrations, to focus them in their transmissions to distant regions where our help is needed and desired. Thus we reach the earth also and sense your doings there, and send you words of instructions, our help in other forms, in answer to prayers which come to us for us to deal with. Here also descend those of higher spheres, and by means of these houses and other influences become tangible to us, so we may commune with them on matters which perplex us. So his house isn't really a house where he just lives. This house is he's really talking about its function, its functionality. And when he says his house is 4 square, he's not laying out the actual plan of a simple cabin with 4 walls, but he's probably actually describing a huge castle or factory, which appears square on the outside from a far vantage point, but in reality contains many areas for different variety of tasks. It's quite clear that his home, as he describes it, is a place of work. That's a vital point of communication with spheres above and below, with specialized areas to facilitate live or in-person meetings with beings who are either beyond an old environment or not yet suited to a more advanced atmosphere. Additionally, it seems like his house works as a switching yard where packets of information come from above and below, are examined and dispositioned to send either onwards or to be fulfilled immediately. It all sounds sterile in its functionality, but all of the effort, work completed by each individual is solely focused on one aim: to help other spirits improve, gain knowledge, work through their problems in order to discover answers to that which have been holding them back. Every detail, every item is covered in love for fellow spirits, incarnate and discarnate. So Zabdal realizes he hasn't really described the house yet, right? He goes, okay, I'm going to finally get to what the house looks like. He goes, I'm going to describe the house as a lower spirit who came to me, described it to me. And I figured this would be the best house to use. He told me that when he came in sight of it, he was reminded of the words, a city which is set on a hill whose light cannot be hid. He was a long distance away, but paused and descended to the ground to rest, for he came so far by aerial travel, which is volitation, as they call it in the books by Chico Xavier. He shaded his eyes and gradually was able to look again at the mansion on the hill, far away in its brightness. So again, remember, he's a lower spirit. Everything is so bright to him, he can barely see it. He said he saw the great towers, but they shone so brightly with their blue light that he could not tell where they actually ended, because the light shot up into the heavens above and seemed to continue there indefinitely. Then the domes, some were red, some were gold, and the light from these was likewise too dazzling to see where they ended, or what was their size. The gates and walls likewise shone silver and blue and red and violet, and blazed with dazzling light, which bathed the hill below, and the foliage of the trees around, and he wondered how he would enter and not be consumed. Now, there's other people who've had NDEs, near-death experiences, who said, I saw the city, I saw this wall, but the stone, it was stone, but it was translucent and it glowed. And it's like, so all of these things that the spirits are telling us, people have seen through their out-of-body experiences, they've seen through near-death experiences. Other mediums from different countries, different areas have seen the same thing. You have to put all of this together in your own mind to decide for yourself what proof you need to believe in the spirit realm, right? And this is all up to each person. Not up to me. And Spiritism tells us, we don't want you to read a book and say, oh, God, I'm believing everything this book told me. Or, oh, yeah, well, Brian Foster told me this and I'm going to believe it. No, that's not what we want you to do at all. I'm only presenting you evidence. The books by Spiritists say, okay, here's evidence for you. At least what we think. You can say they're evidence or not, right? There's no proof that I can, put in a courthouse for this. For you to build your own foundation and a strong foundation of faith in the spirit world. That's one of the reasons we're here on earth, is to do that in our lifetimes. Not because someone told you that, is because in your own mind, in your own experiences, you gather enough evidence for yourself. Who cares about what anyone else thinks? Don't care what anyone else thinks. Your own conscience. It's your own conscience and your mind working on your inner self that counts. So anyway, so he was talking about this. He talking about this guy that saw the house. And he says, okay, we saw him. We brought him. He says, okay. And he said, and then when the lower spirit was taking ready to leave, he goes, what am I going to tell my fellow workers? What am I going to tell them? And say, where were you? And how was it? And he replied, he goes, son, you will never be quite as you were hereafter. For in you will remain somewhat of the sphere's light and perception. But what you in your heart are able to remember will be of a larger measure than you can give to them. For they would not understand if you could tell them. And to tell them, you would perforce have to use a language which is current here. Therefore, tell them to bend their wills to further development. One day they shall come and see for themselves what you have seen, but are unable to relate. So this is another thing in the spirit world. I'll get into even more. I'm going to talk about a lot of it in book 2, the attributes, how we are guided by spirits, how spirits are attributes. And that is, when you go from one level to the next, you're not just, like in high school graduation or college, you're not given this piece of paper. You're actually transformed. You are given more power to use, more tools in your tool bag, more apps on your phone, however you want to describe it. So you can connect to the supreme intelligence, right? You can transfer messages quickly. You can understand things better. You are given this enhancement. And this is, so everything he says, and he said to the spirits, he's also telling us, he goes, what he's telling us is to spend the needed time and effort to alter our character in order to be awarded the privilege to not only enter the narrow gates of heaven, but to ascend to its multiple stages. Remember, and this is in the book, many different places within Spiritist literature, they tell us that our labors and sacrifices to better ourselves will be repaid 100-fold when we return to where we belong, the spirit realm. Isn't that wonderful? There's nothing more. What more could you ask for? So I hope this has been helpful, and I'm giving this to all of you out there so you can understand what is waiting for you and how the spirit realm works. And I think talking about heaven is really one of the major things. And I'm going to keep doing this for some more episodes. And we're going to go through this, and we're going to talk about heaven, and then we're going to talk about the lower zone below. Because you need to see why you're doing what you're doing, and you need to see what's the result of the sacrifices you're making. Now, Spiritism, which is not a religion, it's a doctrine, is not trying to say, well, if you're good and you follow all the rules, you're going to be there. No, and you have to follow our doctrine. That's not what Spiritism is saying at all. Spiritism is just telling you, look, work on yourself. Try to follow the golden rule at least. You don't even have to believe in God. You don't even have to believe in Christ. Be a good person. Become a spiritual person. Believe in love, fraternity, charity, and being honest in your dealings with others. You will get into heaven. There's nothing you have to eat, drink, wear, right? You don't have to give money to anybody. More important, give your time and your shoulder for people to use sometimes when they need that, right? So that's what Spiritism is telling us. And that's why we're presenting all this. And as an example, again, high spirits went and told about a reward in heaven for a couple. And again, this is the spirit Zabdiel. And what he's saying is, he's trying to tell you that we don't merely swim in the same ocean as discarnated souls. We're affected by their proximity, right? So they also exhibit dangerous behavior, encouraged to continue by spirits tied to the lower zone. So again, that's why we're on Earth, is to filter out these bad ideas. And so, whereas there are special people who seek on Earth who seek to regulate their conduct, make poor companions for spirits thinking old thrills. And this is why the spirit Zabdiel enlightens us on the subject of our interactions with spirits in his messages to the Reverend Vale Owen. He says, I may add that there are very few there who realize in any great degree the magnitude of the forces which are ambient around men as they go about their business day to day. These forces are real, nevertheless, and close at hand. Nay, they mingle with your own endeavors, whether you will or not. And these powers are not all good. Some are malicious and some are betweenwise, and neither definitely good or bad. So Zabdiel is desired to illuminate us how we may defend ourselves and filter out the urges that run counter to our conscience. And that was a passage again in Book 2 of Life Beyond the Veil. And this is what he said. He says, how can we actively curtain off ignorant spirits and be a beacon of light to higher spirits? So this is what we should put in practice. So he says, so it behooves that all be curious in their selection, and this may be assured by prayer and a right life. Think of God with reverence and awe, of your fellow man with reverence and love, and do all things as knowing we watch you and mark you, your inner mind with exact precision. And that as you are and become now, so you will be when you awaken here. And what things now to you are material and positive and seem very real, will then be of another sphere, and your eyes will open on other scenes, and earth be spoken of as that other sphere, and that life on earth as the journey made and finished, and all the money and furniture and the trees in your garden, and all you now seem to own as your peculiar property will not be any more at hand. Then you will be shown what place and treasure and friends you have earned in the school of endeavor, just ended and left behind forever. And you will either be full of sorrow and regret, or compassed with joy, unspeakable and light and beauty and love, all at your service. And those your friends who have come on before, now eager to show you some of the scenes and beauties of their present home. So Zabdiel was warning us against holding on to our common beliefs and habits in our physical life. We seldom ponder the meaning of God's love and habitually expend most of our effort in acquiring material goods and seeking refuge from the stresses of work. An antidote to our numbing routine is to stop and meditate or pray. Consider the meaning of life, why we are here, and why we have been given the life that we have. Ask for guidance and it shall be given, according to Zabdiel, according to many spirits, according to passages in the New Testament. There's a legion of angels waiting for us just to open the door a crack. And what he says here, he tells what's the reward. He tells us a real life example. He tells us of a squire and his wife. He was an English country squire. He treated his people as an idealized version of an English country squire couple should. He took care of his people. He and his wife husbanded the other people's farms. He treated everyone judiciously. He actively was involved in the community. He did his part and more. He was a very good person. His wife passed on before he passed on. His wife, in one of the levels of heaven, created this beautiful English country squire house with the help of her friends. And it was it's just a lovely house. And of course, it was much grander than the house they had because she could all created by thought. And now, when she had died, she was an old lady. But now that she was back in the spirit world, as we are told, you conform to what you think you should conform. And Zethal described her as she is fair to look upon. Her figure is more perfect and beautiful than any woman on earth. Her face more lovely. Her eyes shine out a radiance of lovely violet hue. And on her brow a silver star shines and sparkles as it answers to her thoughts within. This is the jewel of her order. And if beauty were wanted to make her beauty more complete, it is there in just a trace of wistfulness, which but adds to the peace and joy of her countenance. And this, he describes the lady of the house. There's a large number of maidens who are in charge of to do her will and go forth on missions she desires from time to time. Again, this is what happens in the spirit world. If you do good and you are actively doing good, you're given more power and people to help you do good when you're in the spirit world. So then she's waiting. So then there's this huge lake, right? And she goes down to the lake and she's waiting for her husband. Her husband just died. She's waiting for her husband to come. And she sees the boat. And the boat comes to the dock, to the landing place. And there's all these, the brilliantly robed throng, they leap off the boat onto the marble step. And then he comes and he's still kind of, he's happy, but he's not quite sure. He's seeing this thing. His eyes aren't quite used to the quality of the light which bathes all things, right? And then he's on the dock, and then from the great entrance and down towards the park comes the lady of the house, and he pauses and he goes, and he looks at her like he's wrapped. He knows her, but he doesn't. And then at last she talks to him. She goes, "Well, James, now you've come to me at last." And he hesitates. The voice is hers, but different. Moreover, she died. He thought, of course, right? He's going to remember. She died an old woman with gray hair, and she was an invalid too. And now she stands before him, this lovely, perfect woman, not young nor old, but of perfect grace and beauty of eternal youth. And she told him this. This is so beautiful. This says, "And I have watched you, dear, and been so near you all the time, and that is past and over now, and your loneliness is gone forever, dear. For now we are together once again, and this is God's summerland, where you and I will never grow old again, and where our boys, Nellie will come when they have finished what is theirs to do in their earth life." And as she talked, so he could get his bearings, right? He could absorb all this new information. And finally he did, and it all washed over him, and he just burst out in tears of joy. And it came to him that this was indeed his wife and sweetheart, and love overcame his awe. I mean, that's soulmates. I mean, this is what, and I'm lucky to have my soulmate here on earth with me. In fact, I was told we had been married before, and I read this, and it was just wonderful. I mean, and he was just overwhelmed with emotion, with gratitude. And so this is the reward of a good life, right? So, this couple had lived a good life as a country squire and wife. They're both simple and God-fearing and kind to the poor and rich alike. And when they say simple, they don't mean simple as in, mentally simple, but simple as their wants and needs, and they don't gossip about people. They don't create conspiracies. They're who they are. And someone calls me simple, that's a great compliment, is I try to be who you are, try to be nice to everyone, even if you don't like them. I try to take that from my mind. I never say, "Oh, I don't like anybody anymore." That's one of the first things you have to do, is just say, okay, if you're showing attributes that I don't care for, okay, you're an immature spirit. God bless you. You will grow in the future. This will all come. So, therefore, all of this that I was telling us is If through your trials on earth, you can stand firm with equilibrium in constant kindness and respect for others, your victory will be ensured. The reward for a just and benevolent life is of an unmeasurable price. The sacrifices we make during our earthly life is nothing compared to what is awaiting us. To help you, practice calm meditative periods and learn to feel the love of the spirit world guiding you. Sense the achievement of ascending as you transform your character in what you always knew you wanted to be. Let the supreme intelligence and dominions of Jesus into your life to assist you. You will not be disappointed. The spirit world is always waiting for us to show we want to ascend, to show we want to improve. It's like a teacher in a classroom. If there's a student, even though the student is struggling, going through hard times, may not be as bright as other students. I don't like someone like me, right? But they're trying. The teacher's going to help that student because they want it to be better. And that's what the spirit world is about for us. They want to help us. And it doesn't make a difference who you are, where you're born, what class you are in, is that none of us are where we shouldn't be. And that's the most important thing to recognize. There's really no such things as victims here as how you were born. Because you were right where you need to be, because the spirit says, no, you're going to be born. Okay, I will make you need to be poor this life, and you need to have a pretty hard life, right? You, on the other hand, this other person will make you rich and see if you can withstand the temptations, because now you think you're ready. We will see if you're ready to withstand the temptations of being really rich. We're all where we need to be in this classroom of life. So accept. That doesn't mean you don't strive to improve yourself. I'm not saying to be fatalistic. And I'm not saying not to strive and get your challenges you want. All I'm just saying is accept your where you are day to day, is always try to improve yourself and help improve life for those, your family and those around you. But don't do it through nefarious means. Don't cheat people, right? Don't take advantage of other people. And I know, first of all, I know it's hard if you're working in a large corporation, because there's always gray areas. So I've been there too. And sometimes you just have to do what you're told until you can find another job that is more honorable. Spirit world recognizes that. You can't, they don't expect you to say, I'm not doing this because, this company is horrible. You have to feed your family. You have responsibilities. This is part of your lesson, is to have to do things you don't like, you don't agree with, you don't agree morally with. But what's that going to do for you? You're going to be in this situation you don't like at all. But that's going to put into you the dedication not to let that happen to you again. And that won't just flow to your next job. It will flow to your next life. It will make you a stronger person. Think about that. So when you think about your life, don't think about your life as one life. Think about where you are. And then a lot of these episodes and things, and I wrote this, the problem is the solution. Think about what's happening to you. And then you can, by finding what kind of trials and episodes you're going through, you can interpolate what you did in the past. And you go, oh, okay, I need to improve on this. Think about those things. And then and then the other thing is, no matter how old you are, you're never too old to dream. Start thinking about your next life. You're like me, I'm pretty old, but I can start thinking about my next life, what I want to do or what I don't want to do. So these are the things, this is what Spiritism and the knowledge of reincarnation and the knowledge of the world brings to us. It's wonderful. It makes you calm. It makes you understand the trials and tribulations and the episodes that we all go through. So I want to thank everybody here for being with our program tonight. And I just want to say that this is a wonderful thing that people are listening, and I want to just bless everyone around us. I want to invite you again to Kardec Radio. Download the app, listen to it on your Android or Apple device. Visit my blog, NW Spiritism. And on the blog, there is a picture of Allan Kardec on the top right. You can click on his picture, take you to the EDICI bookstore. So you've got all sorts of Spiritist books, wonderful books. On also the right-hand side are my books that, I do things like, Spiritism 101, Explore Your Destiny, which is all about the spirit world, the case for reincarnation, how you reincarnate, what it means, the problem is the solution, right? What your past life. I've also written a more personal book, The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, how I see the signs and signals of Spiritism. I'm hoping that there's a lot of materials, and it all depends on how you learn. There's also all the books by Allan Kardec. Look up Allan Kardec in your search engine and put PDF, and all of his books are in PDF. So you can start at no cost to yourself. It's just fast. When I read the Spirit's book, it was like, oh my God, this is the answers I've been looking for my whole life. So I cannot say enough about how wonderful. And then Chico Xavier, Francisco C. Xavier, you'll see on Amazon or the EDI bookstore. His books are just revelatory. So again, God bless everyone. I want to wish everyone a wonderful night. Oh, thank you, Jill. I appreciate you listening in, and I want to thank everyone. God bless everyone, and please ask me questions. You can always post something in Spiritism in the spirit world around us. Ask me questions. You go to my site, hit contact me, send me an email. People do it all the time. I send emails back and forth. If you need to, I can talk to you on the phone. So any help I can for anyone who needs help as far as learning more about Spiritism. I'm not a medium, so I don't do those type of things, but I can hopefully point you to things you can read for all that type of information. God bless you. I'll put the end clip on now. I would like to thank everyone for listening to our program on Kardec Radio, and to point you in the direction to find more information about the spirit world around us. You can visit my blog at www.nwspiritism.com. Again, that is www.nw, as in Northwest, spiritism.com. And if you are ever in the Northwest, I certainly would welcome to have you come to our meeting on Bainbridge Island near Seattle in the state of Washington. Many blessings to all of you, and please continue to explore Spiritism and the spirit world around us.